Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday weather outlook for the southern region brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. When we just look back over the last 30 days as we start a new month here, we can see the temperature anomalies we've been dealing with. It has been a very, very hot end of our summer and beginning of our fall. And one of the questions that I want to answer in this video is, when do we see a changeover in this temperature pattern, and what does that mean in terms of precipitation? Talking about those temperatures, take a look at this. This is just the last week, and wherever you see these dots emerge each day, that tells you where we were approaching a record high temperature or approaching a record low temperature, and they're color coded. We can clearly see the influence of the trough ridge pattern, that deeper trough out west and the bigger ridge over the southeast, which has kept things quite warm as you look back on this animation again. So this has been very much like an extended summer across parts of the south. We still have a few more days to deal with this when it comes to the heat in the southeast before this pattern does finally change over and give us a little bit of a taste for fall. Now, looking at the last 30 days in terms of percent of normal precipitation, we can see the major deficits we've accumulated here in parts of the southeast and parts of Texas. And that rainfall deficit there has come at a crucial time in the development of a lot of the crops that, of course, we grow down here. And we've seen in the drought monitor, which we reported on last Friday, the degradation of drought in a lot of areas. Just to show you what soil moisture anomalies look like, this is the top 3 feet. We're looking at soil moisture availability here. And some of the pockets of drought that are in the Carolinas, into parts of Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi are substantial here. Although there are some places that have been able to get some rainfall that have helped out. And those soils that are a little bit better at retaining the moisture certainly showing up here on this image. But look at parts of Texas. Despite Imelda coming through there in parts of Houston, just flooding things out, get a little bit west of there and things are very, very dry. Where I do anticipate a lot of change over the coming days is going to be right in through this corridor, as some very heavy rainfall is forecast to come through there. And just looking over your next 5 days, it's not much of a change of our narrative we had in yesterday morning's video. The ridge is still in place, and despite some thunderstorm activity here in the Appalachian Mountains, just with the flow going over them, we saw a little bit of this yesterday, we're going to get flow mainly like this, which is going to really just miss much of the southeast over the next several days. That is until we finally break this pattern out, but it's going to take about a week for that to happen. So we still have to endure this through much of the end of this week and then into the very beginning of next week. So if you're in parts of western Texas, the panhandle here, getting into New Mexico, stretching up into parts of southern Kansas, it's going to be exceptionally wet in the coming days. But I told you the thing I want to focus on in this video is, when does the pattern break down? So there's a few things that I notice as you see the animation over here. Now I'm going to address all of these in better detail in the long range update tomorrow, but the big idea here, we have this flow happening in the Indian Ocean. We call it the positive phase of the Indian Ocean dipole. It is getting even stronger. At the same time that that's happening, the Southern Oscillation Index, which is nearby, but to the south of it between Australia and the Central Pacific, it's actually starting to increase a bit. And the interplay between those two things gives us these kind of fake signals on what the Madden-Julian oscillation is doing and what El Nino-La Nina signal is doing. It's an interesting problem we have when trying to understand those things, but I'll explain it tomorrow. A bigger feature, though, is Lorenzo. Look at this. I'll take you back. You just watch the animation. Lorenzo is getting absorbed into this trough that is in and around Greenland here. And you can see it's going to make it stronger, even though Lorenzo goes racing, at least by the operational model, goes racing on off in this direction. Sorry, this is Lorenzo here, going off here. This deeper trough in place is helping to kind of push the systems along. And I know that's kind of a vague way of saying it, but notice what happens by the time we get out to Monday the 7th. We almost get into a 5-wave number pattern. So there's one trough here, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the more of those we have, the less blocked the system is. You add that to the Pacific jet stream kind of flattening out, and things move. Things start to move a bit. And as they do, this means that this pattern we're in is going to break down a bit. But in the near term, this is what we are dealing with. These are all flood watches right into this area. You've seen in the previous videos how we know, and you just saw a moment ago, how we know the moisture is pulling up into that area. And just to show you what it looks like, this is for later on this morning, on Tuesday morning, what we're looking at in terms of precipitable water anomaly. This is the amount of moisture in the atmosphere that can be precipitated. And the moisture surge that is coming on and riding on that boundary there is actually coming from the Atlantic and the Pacific and meeting together right over this area. Now the question is, and this is what's great about this animation, when does that go away? When do we shake this high humidity pattern over the south? Well, let's just play this out and take a look. Certainly through the end of the week, we just see, look, I just step you back through here. Through the end of the week, not much change happening. But watch this. This is Saturday morning, Sunday morning, Monday morning, getting into Tuesday. So past the weekend, you see the blue starting to come in. That is when this pattern finally breaks down. It will also be with that change that we greatly increase our chances of precipitation in this quarter, which, as we just saw, we desperately need. So over the next 60 hours or so here, this is going to take us out here into the day, pretty far into the day on Thursday, midday on Thursday. You saw it here. There's just not a lot happening in the southeast. It's all just running around that ridge. But if you're in New Mexico, western Texas, I'm thinking about Lubbock, that area where we're growing a lot of cotton, trying to harvest some of that cotton, getting up into parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, that's where the action is going to be in terms of our heavy rainfall. Now, with the heat that we're going to get each day down here in the south, the atmosphere is going to pop. You're going to see pop-up showers and thunderstorms. There's no doubt about it. That's very summer-like weather. But anything large and organized, not seen it just yet. Well, at least until we get to the weekend. This is now playing out for us our longer range model, the GFS. Ready? So this is what we just saw, getting through Wednesday, into Thursday, now into Friday. Now, on Friday, we have our first cold frontal passage. It's going to get pretty far to the south. Here's the high that's behind it, Friday midday, but it's a little too dry as it comes through. Watch this, though. This is now Saturday, getting into Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and Sunday evening into Monday. Now, look at that. Remember, that was the transition we were seeing. And the models have been very keen on picking up on that pattern happening on Sunday night in through the day on Monday into early Tuesday. Big ridge on the backside here, big surface high pressure system, finally clearing things out, bringing in the best chances for rain. So it's the end of this weekend and early next week that we get the best chances of rain. And it appears that that high clears things out for a few days. Now, after this, I don't want to show you the rest of this model animation because it's not going to be accurate. But I do want you to know we are watching this region of the Caribbean. We also need to be watching right in through here. So this first piece may go this way, but a second bit of tropical cyclogenesis could happen here and come in this direction as well. So we have a lot of things that aren't really well laid out just yet from like the National Hurricane Center, but some of the models are cluing in on those things, and I want all of us to watch them very carefully, all right? Just to show you there is even analog support in that heavier rain happening again in the 6 to 8 day time frame. So again, that's watching the end of the weekend and early next week. These are the probabilities of being above normal on rainfall. So that shift happening as that big ridge comes in here now is finally bringing in the chances for some rainfall. Is this going to correct our longer term drought problem? No, but it is at least some precipitation. So if you were in the middle of harvesting efforts, you plan for this because this is what we're looking at toward the end of the week. Now remember, we are trying to overcome some longer term drought, which means sometimes the models tend to overperform, overpredict on rainfall as it does come through. But it is rainfall that is coming through, and that's what I want to stress. So watch all the rest of the videos this week so we can keep talking about it and see how it evolves throughout the week. Watch what our temperatures do. This is going to play fast. I got to pause it here and bring it back. Whoa. This is our high temperatures on Tuesday, very much like the middle of July. We notice that by the time we get into Wednesday's highs, now we've spread from central Texas all the way into the Ohio River Valley, and of course through the southern region up here to the coast of Virginia, deep into the 90s. But you can see the front on Thursday. This is the first of two big fronts coming through. And as that one slides through on Thursday, it will finally push south by the time we get into Friday. So really now we're confining our 90s to a much narrower corridor here. And then here we go. Saturday, knock it back. Sunday, knock it back even further. And then we get into the Monday and Tuesday time frame, and we're finally getting back over toward what we could call, even though it's still a little warm, but fall-like weather coming in at this time. So that is going to be some welcome relief. And even as I take you out, this is pretty far here. We're not to next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What do we not see? The resurgence of 90s past that point. So that's a good plan moving forward on our temperatures. Just to show it in aggregate here, this is from the GFS ensemble. Again, we know that highly amplified pattern in the near term, the ridge in place. place. We're going to be, again, approaching a lot of records down here. But the breakdown happens once we get past the weekend, so the 6 to 10 day time frame. The pattern does something a bit more like this with a trough here and a trough there. And as a consequence, we build in a big high pressure cell here, and that's what brings in that cooler air, which is going to be welcomed. And then what we notice is that by mid-month, maybe the flow pattern is doing something a bit more like this. Now, even though we start to see slightly warmer than average temperatures, this isn't calling for the extremes that we saw forecast over the last 6 weeks or so as we approached the time period that we're currently in. Now, I told you don't sleep on the tropics just yet. Looking over the next few days, the probability of tropical depression forming, remember we've been talking about this, it's right here in the Caribbean, and it's appearing to get into the Gulf of Mexico. When we look a little bit longer term, the models are pinning down possibly this corridor showing up a little bit drier through mid-month, but they are picking up on increased tropical activity here. So that I'm just, it's not nailed down yet. We've got to analyze this a little bit more, but it was just a brand new model run that I received last night that I got to keep looking at to understand if the tropics are going to get active again, which they should, just given the time of year, but what they might possibly do to the the east coast of the western side of the Atlantic Ocean. So a couple things I want you to be paying attention to as we move forward. While we're not watching anything directly impacting the United States right now, I do believe the tropics have yet to sing their last song for this season. I think everybody in the Southeast knows that. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll wrap it up right here. I want you all to have a great week. We'll talk to you again very soon, and be sure to check out that long-range forecast coming out tomorrow at my.nutrienagsolutions.com. Talk to you then. Thank you.